If you know your dubstep, you'll probably already know the origins of the cinema bass. But if you're new to the genre, a quick Google search will tell you all you need to know. Basically, the cinema bass is named after the jaw-dropping bass in a certain well-known track by a certain well-known artist. And that's all I'm going to say on the subject. So, as with the suppressed bass in the previous video, let's start by opening up the primary cinema bass in Massive and take a quick listen. Pretty nasty. Now, this is actually a fairly simple sound to create in Massive. In fact, I'm not even using the filters. All that nastiness is coming from just these two oscillators here. Oscillator 1, which is the meat of the sound, is using the screamer wave here and is modulated by LFO5. Oscillator 2, set to the smooth square wave, plays more of a support role and is also modulated by LFO5. The LFO's curve shape and position is critical since it makes possible that all-important womp-womp element which we all know and love. And if I just mute the modulation in the oscillators for a moment, you can hear what I mean. It's just not the same without that LFO modulation, is it? Once again, I've used the channel EQ to sculpt the sound further, rolling off the low end and a little high end as well. Okay, so let's close Massive and move on to the second, this time higher frequency cinema bass. And let's take a listen. The main difference between the primary cinema bass sound and this one is right here, the filters. I'm using a high pass on filter 1 to get that nasty nasal tone, and the infamous daft filter in parallel on filter 2. I'm also using Massive's built-in effects. In slot 1, I'm using classic tube, which, incidentally, I'm also using in the primary cinema bass sound. And in slot 2, dimension expander. Oh, and while we're on the subject, you only ever want to employ stereo widening effects like the dimension expander on mid to high frequency type sounds. Always keep your lower frequencies balanced straight down the center, in other words, in mono. Low frequencies tend to be omnidirectional. In fact, the human ear has a hard time discerning any kind of direction from them. So by panning or spreading a low-end bass sound, for example, you'll dramatically alter the energy and balance of the track, and not in any sort of good way either. Okay, so back to FX and slot 3 here, where we have just a little bit of low shelf EQ. Now, as before, I'm also using the channel EQ here to roll off any remaining low end and to boost some of those highs. Now, there's just one more thing I've added to this sound, and that's right here. I'm using Mac DSP's Revolver to add just a little bit of ambience, a little bit of reverb. And if I play the phrase and turn the reverb on and off, you can just about hear the difference. It's fairly subtle. Finally, as with the suppressed bass, the sub bass here rounds out the cinema bass trio. So let's solo the first cinema bass, hit play and add in cinema bass high and the sub bass one at a time. Nice. Okay, on to the next.